Well, howdy, y'all. Welcome to Once Upon a Time in Texas, episode number 85. I am your host, Michael Mitchell. Just a few random things. Of course, it's getting close to Christmas time, and we've had many a Christmas concert. Went and saw my son's Christmas concert out at McNeil Middle School last week. And, for a bunch of 7th graders, it was pretty good. They're still learning their craft and honing their skills, but overall, it was very, very good. Last night, I had the pleasure of going with my oldest daughter, Lorelei. She and her JROTC unit presented the colors for the Wichita Falls ISD School Board. And so they looked really sharp. They were all prepped. They did all their stuff. And it went off without a hitch. It was great. And then at the end, she presented everybody that was with her. And then our superintendent, Dr. Donnie Lee, stands up and he goes, "Oh, Lorelei, I think I've got something for you here." And he reaches under, the ISD board's desk that they've got back there and pulls out her Letterman jacket, which is super cool. The schools haven't really put together the designs for the Letterman jacket yet. And so the guy that runs or who is over the JROTC at Memorial said, "Well, hey, can I just come up with it? One for our own for JROTC." And the school said, "Sure." And they did. And to my knowledge, she is the first student to receive a Letterman jacket from Memorial High School for WFISD. And so she was just over the moon. Such a cool thing. She was strutting around like a peacock last night and this morning. And then, but the elation was kind of short-lived because we had to jump in the truck and haul butt out to Memorial High School for her Christmas concert. And so she went on out there. I swung by here and picked up number 2, Shanna, and number 3, Raylan. And we went out there and got to hear her Christmas concert. And it was just, it was a dang good evening. It was a busy day. Just really enjoyed ourselves a lot. Also, not a lot to report on Shanna this time. I've talked about Raylan some and Lorelei, but not a lot on her yet. But she's got some things coming up, and I'm sure y'all are going to hear much more about her in the not too distant future. But I would also like to say that Lorelei's Eagle Project, other than going and mounting the plaque to it and her turning in the paperwork, her Eagle Scout project is done. So she'll do her border review the 3rd week, I believe, in January, and super thrilled about that. So often... Oh, I'm sorry. I want to, let me back up. Just to let everybody know, I am going to go ahead and knock off for Christmas. So there will not be a podcast that comes out next week. So everybody enjoy their Christmas. I, too, want to enjoy my Christmas. However, the following week is also New Year's Day, is Wednesday when I normally put these out. So I'm going to go ahead and take that time off too, as most people are. So I will be back up and live with podcast number 96 on January 8th. So miss me, love y'all, but I'm going to take some time, spend some time with the family, and just have a good time. So let's jump into the podcast. Often we see Westerns, and we really fully understand, the importance of trail drivers, and frontiersmen, on these cattle drives and everything. But this week I ran across a name, and I wanted to take a look at one of the most famous black frontiersmen and trail drivers, and his impact on one of the most famous Westerns that most of us have probably seen. I also want to take a look at another guy who went by the name TEX, but lived a really just interesting and fascinating life. But, got the name TEX, but he didn't spend an enormous amount of time in Texas. However, he is well known to me for very different reasons. So we're going to get into that. Before we jump into our podcast this week, as always, I want to thank our sponsors, me and Victory Home Loans. I know there's tons of people moving to and in Texas and Oklahoma, and I know a lot of y'all do too, so let me help them out. We help people win, getting them into the homes of their dreams in Texas and Oklahoma. However, Victory Home Loans does cover a plethora, that's right, I use big words every now and then, a plethora of other states, and mortgage brokers like me, my teammates with Victory Home Loans, we make that process of buying a home faster, cheaper, and easier. So even if I'm not licensed in a state you're moving to, I am licensed in Texas and Oklahoma, but even if I'm not, I can help put you in touch with one of my teammates and help get you guys that dream home. But if you do know somebody moving to Texas or Oklahoma, send them my way. TheMichaelMitchell.com, THE MichaelMitchell.com. Let me help them out. Remember, when you work with me in Victory Home Loans, we sell dreams, not mortgages. Because who wants a mortgage? I don't. But to afford a house, most people have to do it. So where'd this week's idea come from for the podcast? Well, just, I don't even know where I picked up the names. I think maybe I was out driving in one of these places and saw the name and thought, crap, I need to look up him. And then kind of the same way on the other one. So you know what? Rather than me trying to explain it, let me just jump into it, all right? So let's talk about the first guy. This is the first, or probably most famous, black frontiersman and trail driver. Bose Ikard. That's right. Bose, as in the speakers, B-O-S-E. Bose Ikard was born into slavery around 1847, or possibly in 1843, we're not sure, in Somerville, Noxubee County, Mississippi. He lived with his enslaver's family prior to the Civil War, becoming a ranch hand and cowboy as he grew up in Texas after the Ikards moved from Mississippi to Parker County, Texas. On the post-war cattle drives, Ikard served as a tracker and a cowboy, and as Charles Goodnight's de facto banker, often carrying thousands of dollars in cash until the money could be deposited. After his last cattle drive in 1869, Ikard settled in Parker County, became a farmer, and raised a family with his wife, Angeline. So that's important to kind of note. Remember, slavery was still pretty fresh on everybody's minds. Slavery happened in Texas. Post-Civil War, his family moves here, makes a name for themselves, and then Charles Goodnight trusted this guy enough to carry thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash before it could be deposited. That's a lot of trust. So that should tell you, a lot of folks know Charles Goodnight. But that should tell you the kind of relationship these guys have. So after Ikard died on January 4th, 1929 in Weatherford, Texas, Charles Goodnight paid for and erected a marker on Ikard's grave in Weatherford's Greenwood Cemetery with this epitaph. Bose Ikard, 1859 to 1928. We know the 1859 is wrong. He was either born in 43 or 47. But anyway, his epitaph says, served with me 4 years on the Goodnight loving trail. Never shirked duty or disobeyed an order. Rode with me in many stampedes. Participated in 3 engagements with Comanches. Splendid behavior. C. Goodnight. Seems like a pretty fitting epitaph and headstone. But here's where it gets interesting. So how is he connected to one of the most famous Westerns? Well, in June 1929, Goodnight was quoted by the Weatherford Daily Herald as saying about Ikard, I have trusted him further than any living man. He was my detective, banker, and everything else in Colorado, New Mexico, and the other wild country I was in. But wait, Mike. What was the most famous Western? Well, Tricia Wagner, writing in Black Cowboys of the Old West, states that Lonesome Dove, yes, that famous Western Lonesome Dove, with its three main characters, Woodrow Call, Gus McCrae, and Josh Dietz, was based on the adventures of Charles Goodnight and Oliver Loving and their right-hand man, one Bose Ikard. And that, folks, is who Danny Glover played in Lonesome Dove. Josh Dietz in Lonesome Dove was based on Bose Ikard, who Danny Glover played. So the epitaph for McMurtry's character of Josh Dietz was written as this: Josh Dietz served with me 30 years, fought in 21 engagements with the Comanche and Kiowa, cheerful in all weathers, never shirked a task, splendid behavior. Sounds pretty familiar, don't it? So there you go. Josh Dietz of Lonesome Dove and the three main characters of Lonesome Dove, based off of one Goodnight or Charles Goodnight, one Oliver Loving, and the right-hand man, a one Bose Ikard. How cool is that? I did not know that connection. Well, let's check out another guy that spent just not a lot of time in Texas, but had a huge impact across the United States and really means a lot to me and the folks in my hometown. George Lewis Tex Rickard, born in 1870, died in 1929, was an American boxing promoter, founder of the New York Rangers of the National Hockey League, and builder of the third incarnation of Madison Square Gardens in New York City. During the 1920s, Tex Rickard was the leading promoter of the day, and he was compared to P.T. Barnum and Don King. Sports journalist Frank DeFord has written that Rickard was first recognized the potential of the star system. Rickard also operated several saloons, hotels, and casinos, all named Northern and located in Alaska, Nevada, and Canada. So we're going to get into this. Let's talk about this guy and exactly how he's related to Texas. So Rickard was born in Kansas City, Missouri. His youth was spent in Sherman, Texas, where his parents had moved when he was just 4 years old. I'm going to pause there because I don't want to give it away yet. So I'm going to pause on this part of his life for a minute, and I'm going to tell you about all the other interesting crap this guy did, because holy smokes. So we move forward. 1870s born, 1874 they moved to Sherman, Texas, which is, barely Oklahoma, but it is still, or barely in Texas, almost Oklahoma. Screwed that up. Yep, Sherman, Texas. You are in Texas, just barely, just like Wichita Falls, just barely, but you are. So we're going to jump forward roughly 20 years. We're going to skip a little part of his life, okay? So in November 1895, Rickard goes to Alaska. He's drawn by, the same thing everybody else was, the discovery of gold. And he was in the region when he learned of a nearby little gold rush in a little place called the Klondike, 1897. So along with most of the other residents of Circle City, Alaska, he hurries to the Klondike where he and his partner, Harry Ash, stake claims. They eventually sell their holdings for nearly $60,000, which in 1897 is an enormous sum of money. They then opened the Northern, a saloon, hotel, and gambling hall in Dawson City, Yukon, Canada. Rickard loses everything, including his shares of the Northern, through gambling. Apparently, he was not a good gambler at this time. So while working as a poker dealer and bartender at the Monte Carlo Saloon and Gambling Hall, he and Wilson Misner began promoting boxing matches. Boxing was a big thing back then. It was kind of the movie, going to the movie of the day. So in the spring 1899, With only $35 to his name, Rickard and a few others left to chase the gold strikes in Nome, Alaska. Why not? Hell, we're already halfway there. Let's go to Nome and see if we can find some gold. Rickard, it turns out, was a friend of, a little lawman that a few folks might know by the name of Wyatt Earp, who was also a boxing fan and had officiated a number of matches during his life, including the infamous match between Bob Fitzsimmons and Tom Sharkey in San Francisco in 1896. Rickard sent Earp a number of letters belittling, Wyatt's steady but small income managing a store in St. Michael as chicken feed and persuaded him to relocate to Nome, Alaska. The two were lifelong friends, although for a brief period of time they did operate competing saloons in Nome. Earp and a partner owned the Dexter Saloon, while Rickard owned the Northern Hotel and Bar. So by 1906, Rickard is running the Northern Saloon and Casino in Goldfield, Nevada. Not a lot tells us how the hell he ended up in Nevada, other than probably gold. I mean, literally he was in Goldfield, Nevada. But anyway, in Goldfield, he promoted a professional boxing match between Joe Gans and Battling Nelson. The gate receipt of $69,715 set a record in the United States. A year later, Rickard opened the Northern Hotel in, I believe it's Ely, Nevada. I don't think it's Ely, Nevada. I don't remember. Rickard also organized the Ely Athletic Club and was the owner of several mining properties in the Ely area. It may be Eli. I'm probably screwing that up. I don't know. So now we fast forward a few more years. In December 1909, Rickard and John Gleason won the right to stage the World Heavyweight Championship fight between James J. Jeffries and Jack Johnson. And I think we've talked about Jack Johnson before. Rickard planned to hold the fight on July 4th, 1910 in San Francisco. However, opposition from Governor James Gillette and Attorney General Ulysses S. Webb caused Rickard to move it to Reno, Nevada. Rickard and Gleason made a profit of about $120,000 on the fight, which was won by Johnson. Keep in mind, $120,000, 1909. That's a big number. So then apparently he bumbles around for a few years, and February 18th, 1911, Rickard announced that he was through with the business of prize fighting and set sail for Argentina. There he acquired between 270,000 and 327,000 acres in Paraguay to start a cattle ranch. Sounds like a plan, man. So Kansas City, Alaska, Yukon, Nevada. Hell, let's go to Paraguay. So Rickard managed the ranch for the Farquhar Syndicate, whose land holdings in South America totaled over 5 million acres. At its peak, the ranch consisted of about 1 million acres and had between 20,000 and 50,000 head of cattle in its time. In 1913, Rickard's ranch was involved in a political controversy between Paraguay, Argentina, Bolivia, and Brazil. 2 of his employees were killed by Bolivian soldiers stationed there. That same year, Rickard accompanied Theodore Roosevelt on part of the Roosevelt-Rondon Scientific Expedition, which is a really cool book, by the way. If you really want to hear about the badassery of Teddy Roosevelt, read about the Roosevelt-Rondon Scientific Expedition. It's cool. Anyway, he goes on this scientific expedition. The cattle business fails by the end of 1915, and Rickard's loss is stated to be about $1 million. So there you go. So he lost it all to gambling, made it all back, loses it all again. So now we go to 1924, and according to the NHL.com, Tex Rickard was the first man to refer to the Montreal Canadiens as the Habs. Rickard apparently, and so he starts kind of looking into hockey. So Rickard apparently told a reporter that the H on the Canadiens' sweatshirts was for habitants. At the time, this was a, kind of slang term, I guess, for the equivalent of redneck. in Canadian French. And so he starts showing a little more interest in things other than just boxing. And so, yeah, I guess they still call them the Habs. I don't know. I'm not into hockey. If you listen to this and you're into hockey, let me know. So we're going to take a step back a little bit, though. In 1916, Rickard comes back to the United States after losing, all of his cattle and everything down in Paraguay. He returns to the United States, presumably with some money, and on February 3rd, Jess Willard agreed to Rickard's offer to fight Frank Moran in New York City. The fight was held on March 17, 1916, at Madison Square Garden, then in its second incarnation, at 26th and Madison Avenue in Manhattan. The 152,000 in gate receipts sets a new record again for an indoor event. And the purse was the largest ever awarded for a no-decision fight. So Rickard is starting to kind of get a name for himself. So then we bump forward a few more years. Rickard promotes the July 4th, 1919 fight between the world heavyweight champion Jess Willard and Jack Dempsey in Toledo, Ohio. The fight only drew 20 to 21,000 spectators, although seating was available for 80,000, and the total receipts were estimated to be 452,000. After expenses, Rickard still makes a profit of $100,000, which in 1919 is a lot of money. Hell, that's a lot of money today, but it was a lot more then. So after the Willard-Dempsey fight, Rickard began bidding for a title match between Dempsey and Georges Carpentier. The Jack Dempsey versus Georges Carpentier fight took place on July 2nd, 1921, in a specially built arena in Jersey City, New Jersey. The bout, which drew a record crowd of 90,000 people, was the first ever boxing fight to produce a $1 million gate. And at that time, it set a record at almost $1.8 million. As well as it was the first world title fight to be carried over the radio. So Rickard's profit on the fight was reported to be about $550,000, which in today's money is, I don't know, probably something around a metric shit ton. So on July 12, 1920, shortly after the Walker Law reestablished legal boxing in the state of New York, Rickard secured a 10-year lease of Madison Square Garden from its owner, the New York Life Insurance Company. He promoted a number of championships as well as amateur boxing bouts at the Garden. His largest gate at the Garden came from the Jack Dempsey-Bill Brennan fight on December 14th, 1920. The Benny Leonard, Richie Mitchell, and Johnny Wilson-Mike O'Dowd fights also drew well. In addition to boxing, Rickard hosted a number of other events, including a 6-day bicycle race, and constructed the world's largest indoor swimming pool at the Garden. So he's really making a name for himself, and he's doing all the things, right? So in 1926, Rickard promoted the Jack Dempsey-Gene Tunney fight at the Sesquicentennial Stadium in Philadelphia. The bout attracted a world record crowd, again, of 135,000 people, and brought another record gate of $1.895 million. He also promoted the rematch, now known as the Long Count fight, which was held September 22nd, 1927 at Soldier Field in Chicago. This fight brought the first $2 million gate at a boxing match at $2.658 million and was the first to feature a $1 million purse. So if you're not smelling what I'm selling here, Rickard was the right dude at the right time. So Rickard reported between 1924 and 1926, his gate receipts totaled $7.79 million, of which he kept 80% after taxes. That is pretty dang good for 2 years worth of work, even in today's money. But geez, even back then, holy smokes. So that's 1926. So let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about Madison Square Garden. So on May 31st, 1923, Rickard filed incorporation papers for the new Madison Square Garden Corporation, a company formed for the purpose of building and operating a new sports arena in New York City. In 1924, he purchased the Car Barn block on 8th Avenue between 49th and 50th. He acquired the rights to name Madison Square Garden, as the building's owners planned on tearing it down and replacing it anyway with an office building. Thomas W. Lamb was selected to design the new building. Destructions at the car barns began on January 9th, 1925. The new arena opened on November 28th, 1925. The first event was the preliminaries for the 6 Days of New York, that bicycle race. It hosted its first major event December 11th, 1925, when the record indoor crowd of 20,000 people attended the Paul Berlenbach and Jack Delaney fight. The $148,155 gate broke the record for an indoor boxing event. So you see a pattern with this guy. And Madison Square Garden's like, we all know about this place. Even if you've never been there, you know about Madison Square Gardens. So other things he's involved in. In January 1926, Rickard purchased WWGL Radio, which he moved to Madison Square Gardens and renamed it WMSG, as in like Madison Square Gardens. Following the success of the New York Americans in the Garden's first year, the Madison Square Garden Corporation decided to establish a second team, this one controlled by the actual corporation itself. The new team was nicknamed TEX's, TEX' Rangers, and later became known as the New York Rangers, which is a hockey team. Rickard sought to repeat the success of the Madison Square Garden by building seven Madison Square Gardens around the country. 1927, a group led by Rickard signed a 25-year lease for a sports arena at the new North Station facility in Boston, and that became known as the Boston Gardens and opened November 17, 1928. On December 26, 1928, Rickard left New York for Miami Beach, Florida, where he was completing arrangements for a fight between Jack Sharkey and young Stribling, and attending the opening of the Miami Beach Kennel Club, which he was a part of. On New Year's Eve, Rickard is stricken with appendicitis. He was operated on. Unfortunately, he dies January 6, 1929, due to complications from the appendectomy, and he was interred at Woodlawn Cemetery, Bronx, New York. So, all right. What's the connection to Texas? And how the hell did he get the name Tex? Well, his, oops, I lost my place. Okay, so his father dies, and his mother moves to none other than Henrietta, Texas, where I grew up. And, while he was still a young boy, he becomes a cowboy at the age of 11, of course, after the death of his father. And at the age of 23, he was elected Marshal of Henrietta, Texas, and this is when he acquires the nickname Tex. I had no idea. So, on July 2nd, 1894, so keep in mind, not long after, what was he born? 1870. So 1894, he's 24 years old. On July 2nd, 1894, he marries his first wife, Leona Biddick, whose father was the physician in Henrietta. Coincidentally, my father is a physician in Henrietta. Then on February 3rd, 1895, their son Curtis L. Rickard is born. However, Leona dies a short time after in March 1895, and his boy Curtis dies in May. This is probably what led him to this wandering life that he had. And that, folks, is why the rodeo arena in Henrietta, Texas, where we hold Pioneer Reunion each year, is named the Tex Rickard Arena. It is literally named after that guy who spent but a short time in Henrietta, Texas, and lived an amazing just life all over the country and really kind of all over North and South America. So what do y'all think? Let me know what other kind of weird and off the wall, interesting Texas history you'd like to hear about. I want to thank our sponsors again, me and Victory Home Loans. Keep in mind, if you know someone moving to or in Texas or Oklahoma, send them my way. TheMichaelMitchell.com, TheMichaelMitchell.com. And remember, we sell dreams, not mortgages. I love making people laugh and smile and help getting them into homes of their own. Y'all have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I'll be back January 7th. Thank y'all for tuning in to Once Upon a Time in Texas, episode number 95. As always, remember, the stars at night are big and bright, deep in the heart of Texas. Y'all have a great week.